Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're peeling back the layers on an industry that might seem a bit niche, but actually tells us a lot about global economic health. We're talking about the global sawmill
It's one
markets.
of those foundational sectors, isn't it?
Yeah.
Often overlooked, but critical.
Exactly. You might not think about sawmills every day, but, well, they're fundamental. Housing, furniture, you name it. Our mission today is to cut through the noise. We're using the global sawmill market. Trends and Projections 2021-2033 report from Cognitive Market Research. We want to give you a clear, quick grasp of where this sector's been, where it is now, and crucially, where it's heading. Think of it as your shortcut to understanding its pulse.
And what's fascinating here, I think, is how these numbers connect to the bigger picture. They really reveal these significant shifts in economies and resource demand worldwide.
Absolutely. So, okay, let's set the baseline, the global picture. In 2021, this market was already substantial. We're talking $79.55 billion.
A big number.
And it's growing steadily. Projections show it climbing to over $90 billion by 2025, and then up to almost $116.5 billion by 2033.
Wow.
That represents a global compound annual growth rate, the CAGR, of 3.231%. So right off the bat, we're seeing pretty solid, steady expansion over the next decade. That's a strong signal, wouldn't you say?
It absolutely is. A sustained global CAGR over 3%, like that tells us a lot.
Yeah.
It points to the foundational role timber products play. There's this consistent underlying demand that isn't, prone to wild swings that's important for understanding its future stability.
Right. It suggests resilience, not just reliant on, say, new builds alone.
Exactly. The report suggests it's broader. Furniture, packaging, even renovation projects globally are contributing. It's a wide base.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's start digging into the regions then. North America first.
Sure.
Big player. Its market size was around $27.8 billion back in 2021.
Significant slice.
Expected to rise to over $31 billion by 2025 and hit roughly $39.2 billion by 2033. The regional CAGR there is a bit lower than the global average, though, at 2.89%.
Still steady growth.
Yeah, but here's where it gets really interesting when you break down the countries within North America.
Right. Let's look at that. The U.S., naturally the largest chunk, was over $15 billion in 2021. It's projected to grow to over $20.7 billion by 2033. That's a CAGR of about 2.6%. Solid, but, moderate.
Okay. In Mexico.
Mexico also shows steady growth, $5.8 billion in 2021, heading towards $7.6 billion by 2033. Its CAGR is slightly lower, around 2.4%.
But then there's Canada.
Ah, yes, Canada's the interesting one here. Started smaller, about $6.7 billion in 2021, but it's projected to reach nearly $11 billion by 2033. That's a much higher CAGR, over 3.8%.
Okay, wait. So Canada's growth rate is that much higher than the U.S. and Mexico. Why is that? Does the report give any clues?
It does suggest a couple of things. Canada has a very strong export position, particularly into Asia. They leverage their vast forest resources, often with a focus on sustainability, which is increasingly important. Plus, there seem to be specific domestic factors, maybe government incentives or a particularly active construction sector relative to its size, giving it that edge. It's a mix of resources and market strategy.
Fascinating. So a combination of export strength and domestic policy, perhaps. Okay, let's hop across the Atlantic. Europe. Is it a similar story there or different dynamics at play?
Europe is, well, it's complex, a really nuanced picture. The overall market is substantial, no doubt. Around $17.5 billion in 2021, projected to hit nearly $25 billion by 2033. The overall CAGR is decent, just over 3%.
So similar overall growth rate to North America, roughly.
Roughly, yes. But the country-level variations are quite stark. You've got the UK and Germany showing pretty strong growth. Their figures are up around 3.7%, 3.5% respectively, likely solid domestic demand. France was actually the largest single market in Europe in 2021, over $4 billion. But its projected growth is more moderate, about 2.5% annually.
Right. And Italy, Spain?
Italy and Spain show steady, if unspectacular, growth, both around 2.6%, 2.8% CAGR. Russia's projected growth is lower, just over 2%.
But then there are some real outliers, right? Like Sweden.
Exactly. Sweden is a standout, but in the other direction. Historically huge in timber, but its projected CAGR is less than 1%, only 0.94%.
Less than 1%. Wow. Market saturation.
Likely market maturity. It suggests that they might be shifting focus from raw sawmill output volume towards, say, higher value-added products. Engineered wood, maybe more pulp and paper focus, maximizing value, not just volume.
That makes sense for a mature market. But you also mentioned a high growth area within Europe.
Yes, the rest of Europe category. This lumps together several smaller or unlisted markets, and that segment shows the strongest regional KGR in Europe, a really impressive 4.57%.
Over 4.5%. So while the big traditional players might be maturing or growing moderately, there are pockets of really dynamic expansion happening elsewhere on the continent.
Precisely. It shows development isn't uniform, even within a single region like Europe.
Okay, really interesting variations there. Now let's pivot. Asia Pacific. This region often leads global growth narratives. How does it look for sawmills?
Well, Asia Pacific is definitely a powerhouse in this market.
Yeah.
It fits the growth narrative perfectly. The market was valued at nearly $15 billion in 2021. It's projected to hit almost $23 billion by 2033. And its regional CAGR is strong, 3.637%, higher than the global average.
Driven by?
Primarily China and India. Their massive construction and manufacturing sectors are huge drivers. China led the region in 2021 over $6 billion. It's expected to reach nearly $10 billion by 2033, with a KGR close to 4%.
Impressive. And India?
India's story is even more dramatic in terms of growth rate. Started at about $2 billion in 2021, it's projected to hit over $3.5 billion by 2033. That's an exceptionally high KGR of 4.313%.
Over 4.3%. That's huge. Really signals massive future demand there.
Absolutely. It's a key indicator. But it's not just them. South Korea, Australia, Singapore, Southeast Asia as a group, Taiwan, they'll all show solid, sustained growth rates, mostly between 3% and nearly 4%.
So across the board, Asia-Pacific is a major engine for demand.
Definitely. A huge and rapidly expanding market for processed timber.
Okay. Let's head south now. South America. What's the picture there? The overall market is smaller globally, around $7.3 billion in 2021, growing to over $10 billion by 2033. The KGR is just under 3% at 2.963%. A bit more mixed, perhaps.
Very much so. South America is really a tale of contrasts internally. You have some strong performers. Argentina, interestingly, led the region in 2021, valued at nearly $3.3 billion. It's projected to grow steadily to over $4.7 billion, with a solid KGR of about 3.2%.
Argentina leading, okay.
And Brazil. Brazil also shows healthy growth, around 3.3% CAGR. Colombia is similar, about 3.2%. So the larger economies are doing reasonably well. Yes, they are the engines, but then you look at the rest of South America category. It's almost completely flat. The KGR projected is just 0.109%, practically zero growth.
Wow, 0.1%. That's a stark difference. What does that suggest?
It really highlights highly localized economic conditions. Growth seems very concentrated in those few larger economies, while many smaller nations in the region are seeing very little expansion in this sector. It's quite uneven development.
A very clear split then. Okay, moving on to the Middle East. This region had a market value of about $5.8 billion in 2021, projected to hit over $9 billion by 2033. That's a strong overall TGR of 3.9%.
Yeah, the Middle East stands out for its high growth. It fits the narrative of rapid development and construction we often associate with the region.
Who are the leaders there?
Saudi Arabia is the largest market, starting at over $2.1 billion. It's projected to reach $3.6 billion, growing at a really robust 4.425% CAGR.
Over 4.4%, okay.
And the UAE's growth rate is even higher. Its AGR is projected at 4.594%, almost 4.6%. Its market is smaller, starting around $250 million, but expected to nearly double.
Incredible growth rates. Anyone else significant?
Qatar and Egypt also show strong figures, both well over 3.7% CAGR. Turkey is solid too, around 3.6%. It's a clear sign of sustained, large-scale infrastructure projects, big construction ambitions, and urbanization driving that timber demand.
Really underlines the investment happening there. Okay, finally, let's round off our regional tour with Africa. Africa's market was about $6.4 billion in 2021, projected to reach nearly $10 billion by 2033. That's also a very high CAGR, 3.927%, similar to the Middle East overall.
Yes, Africa shows consistently high growth rates, reflecting increasing demand across the continent. Nigeria is a major player, starting at about $1.7 billion and projected to grow to over $2.7 billion. Its AGR is impressive, over 4.2%.
Strong growth in Nigeria. And South Africa.
South Africa's KGR is even slightly higher, projected at 4.417%. Its market is expected to grow from about $1 billion to $1.7 billion.
Wow.
And importantly, the rest of Africa segment also shows strong growth, around 3.6%. So it's not just the two giants. There's broad-based demand linked to urbanization and economic expansion across many African nations.
Okay, so we've done the whirlwind tour. We've seen the global picture, then dived into North America, Europe, Asia Pacific, South America, Middle East, and Africa. Lots of numbers, lots of variation. Let's try and bring it all together. What does this all mean when we, zoom back out? The overall theme seems to be steady global expansion, but the drivers seem quite different regionally.
That's exactly right. When you zoom out, you see this clear pattern the report highlights. Strong, often accelerated growth in emerging markets versus more moderate, steady growth in the mature ones.
Give us some examples of that contrast again.
Okay, so think about those high CAGRs we saw. India at 4.3%, Nigeria 4.2%, Saudi Arabia 4.4%, the UAE nearly 4.6%, even that rest of Europe category at 4.5%. These are places seeing significant development, infrastructure build-outs, new housing needs.
Right, the high flyers.
Then contrast that with North America overall at 2.9%, Europe overall at 3.0%. Still growing, absolutely, but at a more measured pace. And then the real outliers like Sweden, under 1%, showing market maturity or a shift in focus.
So, what can this tell you, the listener, about global economic development?
Well, it paints a picture of shifting economic centers of gravity, at least in terms of demand for basic materials like timber. The surge in developing economies is undeniable. It points towards where future investment, resource allocation, maybe even population growth is most concentrated.
That's a great synthesis. So hopefully you now have a much clearer, informed perspective on this, maybe overlooked, but really vital market. It truly is building our world, reflecting these bigger economic shifts.
And maybe one final thought to leave people with, connecting it back to the bigger picture.
Go ahead.
This sustained, and in many places increasing, demand for timber, especially from rapidly developing regions, well, it naturally brings up some pretty important questions. Questions about resource management, about sustainable forestry practices. What does this level of demand mean for the future of our planet's forests? How will these consumption trends interact with environmental policies and the global push for sustainability in the coming decades? It's something worth thinking about.
Definitely food for thought. A crucial link between economic growth and environmental considerations. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive today. Until next time, keep digging, keep questioning, and keep learning.